Welcome to the College Rivals Podcast, where it's all about heated rivalries within track and field and weekly innovative discussions on how we revolutionize the sport of track and field into a professional league on par with the NBA and the NFL. And now, your host whose favorite thing in life is to disrupt society for the good, Simon Bowen. Welcome to College Rivals, where rivalries begin and never ends.
Hello, team of rivals, sporting fans, track and field boys and girls. This is Simon Bowen. Alongside my co-hosts is Tasha Woodward-Sumner and Michael Jasper. Welcome to another episode of the College Rivals Podcast, where I'm honored to interview distinguished guests, track and field athletes, experts in media, the business of sports, branding and marketing, coaching, sports management, sports psychology, sports medicine, mental health, and other interesting people talking about rivalries and how we revolutionize the sport of track and field into a professional league on par with F1 motorsport, the NBA and NFL. The sport of track and field is fun, the cheapest to enter, and more accessible than any other sport globally. No other sport can claim that level of accessibility, inclusivity, and diversity on a global scale. In fact, it is the first sport most aspiring athletes go to because of the critical requirements of developing agility, strength, and speed, which most elite sports require to attain the highest level of success. Through active participation leading up to high school level, the sport generally receives one of the highest numbers of participants compared to any other sport. However, after high school, they eventually lose most of their top athletes to other sports, mainly American football, basketball, and other major lucrative sports that have at its core a defined structure, marketability that illustrates a clear path to becoming a professional athlete at the elite level. The sport of track and field needs to reinvent itself to illustrate what other major successful sports have done, such as the NBA, NFL, and Formula One, famously known as F1 motorsport. My guest today is Patricia Melton, a graduate of Yale University, New Haven, Connecticut, where she earned a Bachelor's of Art at Yale University and a Master of Arts in Educational Administration and Supervision/Business at Arizona State University, famously known as the Sun Devils. She's currently the president of New Haven Promise, that had overseen the disbursement of more than $25 million in scholarships to more than 2,300 New Haven students. Those outstanding athletes in college. Melton has applied many competitive and leadership lessons to overcome significant challenges in her athletic and professional careers. Resilience and ability to pivot are baked into her DNA. Patricia, as a student athlete, had a remarkable career at the track as well as while attending Yale University. She was a field hockey and lacrosse recruit. Melton became a track walk-on, and after disappointing season and conflict with her college coach, which I'm sure she'll have a chance to go into further, she's a 7-time Ivy League champion, captain of her team, and NCAA track All-American. As a sprinter, she moved to the 400-meter hurdles late in her college career. She has been bestowed the highest athletic honor in her Yale class, the Nellie Elliott Award. Melton finished her athletic career at the 1988 U.S. Olympic Trials, where she was a finalist in the 800 meters. And for listeners around the world, all of us currently in studio are 800-meter specialists. So this discussion is going to be quite exciting. So now today, we're talking about rivalries and their potential impacts on making the sport better. We will also look at some of the challenges we face as an athlete and how we might learn something from the past. With our special guest from New Haven, Connecticut, Patricia Melton certainly will delight our audience on this topic and more. For our listeners and viewers, this episode should be very interesting as Patricia, an Ivy Leaguer, brings a different perspective to our community. Patricia, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Simon. That was yes, it's wonderful to be here.
Yes. So now, can you just reflect on your time running at Yale University? Walk us through what was life was like, because I think initially you did not go to Yale to run track, correct?
Correct. I was recruited for field hockey and lacrosse. I competed for one semester, and I disagreed with the coach wanted to make me the goalie. And I thought, well, you could have shared this so that decide once I got there, that's what I wanted to do. So I was, sports were a really big part. I wanted to play D1 and Yale's D1. And I said, okay, I got to look around now. It was just starting its sort of varsity status. So there were a couple of sports that were varsity. The first year that I was there, it was the first year of varsity status for women. Although we did have a men's team that is over 100 years old. Yale was formerly an all-male institution and went co-ed in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So I knew that, in fact, the track coach was a two-time Olympian.
Uh-huh.
110 high hurdles.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
And that was Lee Calhoun.
Oh, that name sounds familiar.
Yes. I think he was 60, 56, and 60. And I said, oh my goodness, I can actually run for an Olympian.
Yes. Yeah.
I went over to the track.
Yeah.
And the multi-event coach was there, Bruce Hescott. And he said, run around this. It was a cinder track, actually, outdoors. This was truly back in the day.
way before the internet.
So 1980, 77.
Yes.
And he said, run around the track. I really didn't know anything except for what I'd watched on TV. And I ran around the track. It was a 400 as hard as I could. He said, do it again. I think I did 5 400s. I was not very winded. He said, come back tomorrow. And that's how my coach started. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a lot of endurance. And so I really was very green. I didn't know anything except for what I saw on the Olympics. That's it.
Wow. So, what I guess, was it like, was it the coach that approached you from the beginning?
No, this coach was really not a great person over in field hockey. He was from London. I thought he had some issues around race. Yeah,
oh, wow.
I said, if I'm the best, I do not want to be denied. And I was thinking, on a team sport, that a coach could just say you don't fit in. Yeah. So that's how I ended over at track. I was like, hey, if I'm the best, I can't be denied.
Wow.
That's how I ended up going to the track.
Now that's interesting, because one of the things that while running that I've always been curious about, and I think the Penn Relays is this kind of major platform where you pretty much see everybody. Every now and then, a few Ivy Leaguers, you got to take notice, because they actually deliver the goods. And the Ivy League school has been always blanketed with they're just super bright, and they just think that they can't do anything else. But for some reason, I couldn't help but want to ask you, what was that kind of stereotypical, being an Ivy Leaguer, but actually want to be taken seriously as an athlete?
Well, again, we just celebrated 50 years of varsity women's athletics at Yale this past weekend. And at the time, I had no idea that we were making history. I didn't know it was the first year of track and field varsity status for women. So I had no idea that I was making history. I mean, we all were. And I would say there were some inequities. Yale has done a lot on Title IX. I don't know if you knew that with the rowers, remember they went into the athletic director's office in like 75, and they stripped down and they had on their back Title IX.
Oh,
They appeared in the New York Times, and it was
yes.
huge.
Wow.
That was when now women's athletics, I mean, the track field hockey was on par. They got a lot of money, but some of the other sports like track and field, absolutely there was a discrepancy. The men got to go to Florida and the women did not. Training in Connecticut in the spring, it's pretty cold.
Yeah.
Right. So we had a change in coach, and I took a couple of years off, and I came back in, I believe it was 81, and we were under a new coach. Lee had left. I wasn't sure if I was going to go out, but I decided to go out, and there was a complete change. We were getting an upgraded track. We had a banked wooden track. It was wonderful. So we went from having an indoor cinder track, which was pretty awful,
Yeah.
dirt track outdoors, to a banked wooden track that actually had a lot of give. It was really a fast track. And Sebastian Coe came from England to help us dedicate our facility. So,
wow.
So yeah, and we had an exhibition meet against Stanford and I think Stanford. So, we were running an exhibition 4x4 relay. Regina Jacobs was running third leg. I was running anchor.
Yeah.
Hurry! This woman's fast.
Yeah.
That's right. She went to Stanford, right?
Yeah, she did. So those were the days of Brooks Johnson,
Okay.
Lucy Hop, Regina Jacobs, and that
Meredith
whole
Rainey.
crew of distance runners.
Yeah.
And whatnot. And so they came and we did a little exhibition with Sebastian Coe there. And somehow, miraculously, I don't know how we won that relay, but somehow we did. Because, Stanford has athletic scholarships and Yale does not. They just have academic scholarships. So we were just, oh my goodness, we're going to compete against the school that has athletic scholarships and of all schools, Stanford.
Yeah.
It was really very intimidating.
Which leads me to on the question of rivalries. Now, at the epicenter of our strategy, our show, we talk about rivalries a lot. And I should tell you, it's quite strategic. And I think you're perhaps one of the perfect person to actually delve deep into this with somewhat of a double whammy effect. Around rivalries, college rivals see it as kind of the main focal point in telling the stories of past and present athletes, but also looking at the advantages that actually can help to improve the sport. We believe at current, track and field is a semi-professional sport. It is not there yet up with the likes of F1 Motorsport, the NBA, and NFL. Tell us what you've learned about rivalry and the sport that really appealed to you to make you the elite athlete you became. Just listening briefly how you guys have evolved and now you're starting to rub in shoulders and run against some of these people. Walk us through what's that like competing against some of these athletes.
Well, the Ivy League, there are these really historic rivalries between Harvard, Yale, and Princeton.
Right.
And particularly at the time, Princeton was Larry Ellis.
Yes.
And who was the women's coach? Oh, man, I can't remember his name. But and Princeton always had a very good team. They would never publish their results, and you always knew that they would come prepared. So, you would compete at the HYP meet, and you really wanted to. I mean, that was the creme de la creme, were the Princeton runners. And there were two runners that were my arch rivals, Jane Bennett, who was a 100-meter runner, and Sally Anderson, who was a 400-meter runner. Now, when I first started running, I was running the 400-meter hurdles. I was running 100, 200, and indoors the 55-meter, the 200, and then the 4x2 and the 4x4. And so I did the relays. And in the Ivy League, it's not unusual that you're doing 4 and 5 events because
Yeah.
you just in that dual meet or
Yeah.
that tri meet. And one day we had a dual meet. I think it was against Harvard. It was a dual meet, and I had already run 5 events. And my coach came to me and he said, I know I can't do he had something up his sleeve. I know I can't ask you. I said, what's and he said, if we win the 400-meter hurdles, then you will win this meet. And he said, I really can't ask you to do that. I said, that's not what I asked you. I said, if we win, that was a little bossy. If we win, it was just a matter of being athletic, right? They didn't have anyone who was really. So that was the first time I ran it. And, if you knew anything about Lee Calhoun just tried to make everybody a 100-meter hurdler. So I could hurdle a little bit, but I really wasn't very good. So I knew how to hurdle, but I hated the 100-meter hurdles because I'm not very tall. 5'5". I was terrified of the 100 hurdles. And so I could run those 400 hurdles. So he put me on the 400 hurdles. And after 5 events, I ran it. I ran something like low 63. And he said, he looked at the clock. And he said, this is going to be your event that you're going to run at nationals. He said, wow. It was just a natural event. I had a lot of endurance. And that year I went to, I'm trying to remember where the AIAW, it was AIAW at the time, where those championships were. But I went to the AIAW and because I really wasn't that fast. I was okay for the Ivy League, but I was not a pure sprinter. I was walking. And so we worked on the hurdles. And that year I ran 59 and came one place away from making the final in my 5th race.
Okay.
That is so amazing. I started as a hurdler and then moved to 800. So I appreciate the story.
Yes. And that's another story about how I got to the 800. But so that's what I did. I didn't run the hurdles. We would go to spring training, and I would run a qualifying time for nationals. And that's all I would do. And then when I would go to Easterns, I would run the 400. But in our championship meet, I didn't run the 400 hurdles. I ran the 100, the 200, and the relays. And so, that second year in 82, which was my senior year, that's the year that the NCAA was split. So the NCAA nationals with Sandra Patrick Farmer, all those folks were in Utah. And we went to University of Texas at Austin. So we went to AIAW, and it was really a strategic move to sort of figure out, it's going to be packed over here. There were still going to be folks. And my 400-meter hurdle rival was Edna Moses. So she was a 400. She was running. I mean, she was really good. She was running like 57. I was like, oh my God. Those were the early days, 100 hurdles. And so I went to the Texas, and I came in second, and I just skipped over 58 and ran a 57 and came in second.
Oh, great. Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it really was my event, right?
Yeah. So in terms of your main competitors, who constantly gave you the jitters? Who were you facing constantly to determine whether you would win or at least get a good time? Who were you seeing when you show up at these track meets?
Oh, definitely in the Ivy League, it was Princeton. It was straight up Princeton. Princeton was very good. And I remember the HYP meet is before the heptagonal championship. So going to the HYP meet, I had the leading time in terms of the 200 and the 55 meter. And, we ran the 55 meter and I lost to Jane Bennett in the HYP meet. And then I lost to her again in the 200. I said, oh my God, I can't lose to her. And so the Ivy League championships were up in Cornell.
Okay.
And you all probably know Dorianne Lambelet. She ran for Cornell. She was an 800 meter runner.
Okay.
And so I said, okay, there's nothing I can do. I was prepared. It was a mental thing.
Yeah.
So I would get very nervous. I was running against folks who ran age group. I mean, I was a walk-on. I was like, I just felt like it was so far behind all these age group runners. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to talk to everyone because I would get so intense and I just shut down. And I said, okay, I'm going to try and relax. I'm going to say hello to everyone. I'm going to miss a little happy party. And it worked because when we were at Cornell, I won the 55 meter, I won the 200, and I won outstanding performer in the meet. And then outdoors. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was definitely a mind game. It was a mind thing.
Did you have the Ivy League record? I forgot what's her name in the 400 meter hurdles right now.
Yeah, Brenda Taylor. So I held the record for many years.
Right.
Brenda Taylor broke that record when she went to the Olympics.
Okay. Right.
So she ran I think a 55 about 10 or 15 years ago.
I
went to and then when I retired, well, this is what happened. I was how I ended out with Brooks Johnson was he was my coach's coach. So Mark Young, he was my coach's coach. And I said, if I'm going to continue to run the hurdles, I really need to be in a warmer climate. I'm just too far behind.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I got to Stanford. And I got out there, it didn't work out, So I came back to the East and I I said, okay, I can run the 800. It's just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
800. So I was with this club, Liberty Athletic Club, that had a lot of distance runners like Lynn Jennings.
Oh, yeah.
Joan Benoit, and you had
Yeah.
And so I competed with that club. And then I did an 800 indoors at Harvard in an open race. And Chris Gregorek was in that race. And I really challenged her and came in second. I think I ran something like 205 or something.
Okay.
I had never run lower than like 212 or something like that. I was like, I think I can do it.
Yeah.
Great. So that's how I moved up to the 800 early.
No, 205 is legit.
Yeah. It was back then.
An indication. It's an indication pointing to say, hey, I can take this seriously. But so now we have read, and I guess I'm one of the privileged ones to see your work coming through LinkedIn and Facebook. The work that you've been doing at New Haven Promise.
Yes.
Do you want to enlighten our listeners and viewers about your current role as the executive director of New Haven Promise and some of the work that you've been doing?
Right. So New Haven Promise is a scholarship and support program. We fund students to go to college who live in the city. They go to public schools and they get good grades. If they're able to get a B average, live in the city, have, good attendance, then they can earn up to a full tuition scholarship at one of our public institutions and a smaller benefit at our private institutions. So we started with about 111 in 2010. I came in 2012, 111 students or 150 qualified, and then 111 went to college. And I think that first year we had something like 20 kids go to UConn. But we decided to leverage our scholarship and approach UConn, because that we really saw that as the flagship institution, to actually add money to our scholarship. And so now, well, before the pandemic, we had about 100 kids a year going to UConn. So at any one time, I mean, we went from, maybe 20 kids in 2010 to over 300. Going to, we have over 300 kids at UConn. Our second, this is Southern Connecticut State University. We have about, 180. And then we have, I think, 60 over at University of New Haven, about 50 over at Yale. So, we have at any one time about 800 students in college on a merit scholarship. So it has nothing to do with sports. It's just, really helping our students to keep their debt low. Many of our students who come out of UConn come out with no debt, actually. And, for every student that qualifies for the grant at UConn adds an additional $5,000 per year. So an additional 20. And it's actually quite lucrative, and which is why so many students have gone there.
Wow,
that's fantastic.
Right.
That's a leg up with no debt. I mean,
Yes.
That's a
really
that's
great.
for sure.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of work like with the African American population, women, things like that. How I am very curious, I think we all are actually, about your college decision going to Yale. And then did you consider an HBCU, or like how did that process come along?
Right. So I attended an independent school, a private prep school through A Better Chance, which is a scholarship program that sends urban kids to these prep schools. And I got a scholarship out of Cleveland to go to a school in Concord, Mass, Middlesex School. When I was there, I was playing that's where I was playing field hockey, lacrosse, and basketball. I love playing sports. I really wasn't good to make my inner city basketball team. I got cut. So I was able to go to this prep school and really develop my talent. And I just soaked it up, played everything. You were required to play 3 sports. So you played year round. Okay. And when I was looking at college, I originally wanted to go to Princeton, believe it or not. But then the admissions person came, and he was really connecting with legacies. He was connecting with the white kids whose parents. So I just sort of scratched it off the list because I didn't think I would get in. So I was going to go to Brown, which is where my coach had transitioned, and she was the field hockey coach at Brown. When I applied, I got in there, but my college counselor said, we want you to apply to another Ivy League school. I think they wanted me to apply to Harvard, but I didn't want to apply to Harvard. It was kind of more, like I was trying to get out of Massachusetts. It wasn't diverse enough.
Yeah.
And so I looked around, and I just didn't think about HBCUs. I don't think they were on the list, right? I'm the first to go to college in my family. The HBCUs did not come to our school. So I just sort of, I was just going to follow my coach. Now, thank goodness I didn't go to Brown. I actually applied to Yale. I knew they had an incredibly competitive D1 program. And I said, not very many people from my school go to Yale. I think I'm going to, apply. And so I got in. I actually got into every place I applied. And it wasn't until I actually got into Yale that I realized how prestigious it was, because I
that's so interesting. Right. Oh my gosh.
I didn't know. And then when I got in, everyone started treating me differently. I said,
there you go.
I think Yale is a pretty decent place. I really didn't know that. Yeah. And I went to Yale, and it was because of the athletic program and the academic. I just didn't want to go to Harvard. I really wanted to go to Princeton, but I just said, no, I'm not going to go to Princeton. I wasn't really on their radar. I was for lacrosse and field hockey at Yale and at Brown.
So,
Mhm.
and it all worked.
Yeah.
That's great. So, and you had touched on it a little bit earlier about like the scholarship issue. Well, and it's probably not necessarily an issue, but like the Ivies can't give athletic aid.
Mhm.
So do you feel that's a disadvantage, or they're at a disadvantage with like the other, like the Power Fives and the other schools in the NCAA who can give more aid?
Well, you're definitely going to get your need met. So, everyone is expected to make some little small contribution, like I think it's 1,500 or something. And so I pretty much got everything. I mean, they had packaged some loan in there, but I was getting pretty much maybe 50% of the tuition and room and board in scholarship. And so I thought that was pretty good. They probably there were a few other schools that were not that were a little bit better, but I said, well, I think I could handle it. I just started, adding up how much I was going to owe after 4 years, and I said if I can get 3 years for free and pay for 1 year, I could handle that. And that's what I said. I think the other thing, I had something very tragic happen to me when I took 2 years off from school after my freshman year. And the night before I was to come back to Yale, I found out that my brother had been murdered. So I was completely devastated, and I wasn't going to run. Like I can't actually remember that. I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything in that fall. I remember we had a new coach. Lee had left, and I was just like, I just wasn't feeling it. I was really grieving. And then I just decided, okay, I'll go talk to the coach. I really didn't think I was going to run. He said, he had heard, and probably he could see that I was really hurting.
Yeah.
And he was very gentle and said, well, if you want to show up, just show up. And so basically I showed up, and he would give me these workouts, and I would run like I was in a race.
Mhm.
Because that's what made me feel
Right.
good. So that's
Yeah.
how I actually got good. And
Current
I
motivation.
that was where that was my safe space.
Yes.
Just leaving it all
Yeah.
on track. And
Wow.
that's, I run the 5 races, and really that's how I became a good runner, frankly.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Wow.
Can I piggyback on Tasha's question about HBCUs and Ivies versus Division One? Do you think that if Ivies and HBCUs had the same resources as some of these larger scholarship schools, that the competitive nature would be better? Like facilities and number of staff and support staff and coaching things
Mhm.
that the Ivies and the HBCUs would be able to compete with some of the larger institutions.
Well, I would say that, when I was there, their facilities had fallen in disrepair. Because
Mhm.
remember, we had a cinder track.
Right.
I'm probably going to get lung cancer from that cinder track. They had a cinder track. You had to wet it down. And then
Wow.
they had the dirt track, and their facilities had fallen into disrepair. It was really awful. And then when the coach, Mark Young, came in, he made a deal. He said, you have to bring in a new track. You have to whatever. You have to give the women equal resources to the men. So he was actually the women's coach. He was the women's coach, and they did bring in Steve Bartold, who was the men's coach. But the way they coached, like Mark coached all the sprinters, male and female. And then Steve was more the middle distance. And then we had a cross country. So, in that sense, we had some really unique things that happened. And then we started to see sort of equality in those resources. We started being able to go to, Florida for spring training. We ran in FAMU relays.
Yeah.
It was really great. And then we also got to travel to the Oxford Cambridge meet in London. And
That's great.
so, you really did see sort of equality, and we traveled together. They finally said, okay, we're going to have it where the men and women just all, compete together in one meet, as opposed to the men over here and the women over there. And that was brilliant because it really equalized the resources.
Equality. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah.
So nowadays, track has evolved quite a bit. I mean, I think that's kind of safe to say. And one of the reasons why Simon started this podcast has us sort of joining him. We want to sort of rethink track and field and how we can make it a more mainstream sport. So, like currently right now, do you follow track and field? Are you an active participant in watching it or going to meets at all?
I go to some meets. I definitely watch it on TV. I love watching the international meets. I love watching the Jamaican, watching the women. I love watching the Europeans. I competed a little bit at the national level, up through 1988. So I competed at Melrose Games. I never competed in Europe, but I did compete nationally.
Yeah.
In a couple of different meets. I would say that, I think folks need to rethink track so that it can be more of a spectator sport. Having folks who have to be there all day is,
So no. 20 hours. 20 hours.
And you're only going to get your die-hard people, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been I guess it's safe to say, a recurring theme we've been hearing about. That's just one of the things we try, especially in the States, and we look at other sports, or not just the States, Formula One, Simon has mentioned. These sports are very structured, and you know what's coming, and it's easier to digest, if that makes sense. And so one of the things we've been asking people who've been involved with the sport and have run in the sport, like, what do you think would make the sport easier for the layman to understand? Not just obviously making the event shorter, 20 hours is too long. But what do you think would make it just easier for people to lay or just to say, oh, okay, I'm going to watch track and field. This is pretty cool. Any ideas what you think would make it easier to understand or digest?
Yeah, I think, like I said, shorter, really looking at the facilities. So, I mean, you have the Penn relays, and at one time, I guess you had, you could fill that stadium, but you can't really fill it now. So you need a stadium that's like 10,000, not 70,000. You will attract 70,000 in Europe, but you're not going to attract 70,000 here. And so, I know when we ran the FAMU relays, everybody came out. It's a huge thing. So I guess it depends on the region, but, I think promotion, certainly structuring it in such a way that it's not a 20-hour meet. That's a lot to give up. And, just restructuring it and having it in a smaller facility. So when they moved it from the Melrose Games from Madison Square Garden to the Armory, that was a great move. It's really tight. You could fill that facility. It was a great place to compete for athletes and to spectate.
Right.
Those are the things that have to be taken into account.
So the Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Ivies, that team concept, really, right, was something that was a driving force in terms of rivalry, right? That team concept. I think track has gotten away from that. It's a more individual elitist sport. So, and I know you gained to track not directly from high school, you had a different route, but while you were there, was the notion of beating Harvard or Princeton something ingrained in the team? Like we were talking earlier.
Oh, yes. Woo!
Like,
Ginned up.
yeah.
Ginned up.
Oh, yes. I mean, the track, the HEPS championship were at Yale, I think not this summer, but last summer. And I mean, you have families who come, you have these rivalries. It's people are cheering, they're excited. The families are very much into seeing their student run. And, many of them, not all of them, but many of them probably competed in the Ivy League. So you have these incredible rivalries,
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
Harvard, Yale. I mean, that just Ivy League title, like, Tasha, they're going to be Georgetown. Yeah. Georgetown.
Villanova had to beat Georgetown.
When I got to Georgetown, I'm saying the same thing. You don't lose to Villanova. So I think that's what the sport is missing. Help to bring there. It's something.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I think they did it with, they have such a huge following of Jamaicans at the relays, and they have such tradition of folks coming out and running, and, they're able to sell a lot of seats, at least before the pandemic. And the year that Usain Bolt came, oh my God, that was just crazy.
yeah,
But,
that was a record. Yeah,
oh,
that was a
yeah.
record attendance. And I actually was working at that meet as a director. But it's interesting. You have touched on, and I'll say this, a lot of commonalities by most or all of our guesses. And I'll list them off: event structure, duration of meets,
Yeah.
that lack of entertainment. The pen relays comes up a lot in terms of what you can learn from the pen relays, why it's a rock and roll show, and why when the numbers are up, what are they doing? These are commonalities that we're trying to, when we bring certain type of guests on the show, we actually point into something for decision makers. As I said before, the sport is a semi-professional sport, which leads me into asking you about, we are all college athletes, and at some point in time, right around graduation, when the stars starts to come down and the place gets dark, all of a sudden, something hits you psychologically that you no longer have that close relationship to the team, the coaches, the masseuses, all those people that were a part of your family, a part of your life while running for Yale. And then you hit that turn now where you says, okay, what should I do? You mentioned earlier on you ran 2:05 indoors. That is an indication pointing to something that you could potentially go on further in the sport.
That's role it's called.
Right.
Like it is. That's
Right. Right. Walk us through what was that mindset when you realized the lights out, and what should Patricia do?
Well, I was very, very good. When I ran that time in Texas in the 400-meter hurdles, that was the fourth fastest time in the country that year.
Right.
So in 1984, that was the first year that the 400 hurdles were contested for women. And I was trying to sort of make the team, training. I mean, that's a dream. It's a dream that I never thought that I would be able to have. So I said, well, let me try and do it. I ended up getting injured. So I was injured in 84. And then when I decided, I think I could do the 800 meter. I really just didn't know how far I could go.
Mhm.
And was actually, did make the final, which was a shock to me, but
Yeah.
I did. And, I was like, this is great. I think I've gone as far as I can go. I had a home. I worked in the shoe store, for a couple of hours. I was allowed to travel and work out with the team. I came back to New Haven because I had better facilities. So, then we was trying to find a home, facilities, doctors, and all that sort of stuff. So I was able to get that coming back here in 86 to 88. And then I went to the trials in Indianapolis. Actually, Marbella Washington, who was my roommate, she went to Arizona State, was in that world record race with Flojo.
Oh, wow.
And she came back to the room. She said, "Oh my God." I was like, "Oh my God." I mean, everybody
We
was
got to bring on the show.
incredible times. It was fun as heck. Jackie Joan Kersey.
Yeah.
Everybody was just running super, super fast. And then she popped off that 10:49. We were like, ah,
I know.
woo. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, but
I looked around, when I got there, I had sort of pieced it together, ran with the club. They were able to get me some appearance money.
yeah.
And, we kind of cobbled together because that's what you did back then.
Right.
You kind of cobbled things together.
Yeah.
And so when I looked around in the finals, I said, this one's married, that one is at home. I really didn't have a support system.
Yeah.
And I said, I was 28 at the time, and I didn't, I just said it, without a support system, I can't go faster.
Correct.
And track was just something that I got good.
Yeah.
I went very far, which was my mind. I don't even know how it happened. And I said, I lived a charmed life, really.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so in Indianapolis, I said, okay, I'm ready to start my career. And I think that maybe that's a little different. Maybe if I had, really good support, I would have gone a little bit longer. But I was actually very anxious to start my career because all my peers on the track team were doing quite well in corporate America. And I was just like starving.
Right. You were a starving athlete.
Yes, I was.
Actually,
I said, I am tired of being poor and starving. I am retiring. And I was really very happy because, how many people can say you were one of the best in the country in that event?
Right.
It was like, I had only been running a couple of years.
Which leads me to and thanks for sharing that story, Pat, because right now in this broadcasting studio, most of us have actually come to that point. And this is something interesting I'm going to say because it happened to me as well. So I studied engineering, and one of the things in the back of my head was I actually saw that track and field is just not the same as the NBA and NFL. And in the back of my head, there's a little bit of comfort and sometimes anxiousness when this is over because I know it's going to come. I'm just going to try and transition into because there's no structure to even give you a fair shot to see, really fast, if I take this full time and seriously, how much great I could become. So there's this struggle between sometimes when you go to school and you do take that side of your schoolwork seriously, because in the back of your head, at some point in time, I'm just going to go and venture into this. That somewhat provided a cushion for some of us, but we're also torn on the other side, which I can speak for myself. I quitted abruptly and regretted it because I've actually tested the waters with some very good coaches in the world, and they told me I could run 143. At the time, I was mucking around running 146. I was a late bloomer. But to be honest, at George Mason, I had everything at my fingertip. Masseuses, doctors, chiropractors, all the facilities. But the moment I graduated, I was in a lost world.
hmm
So,
Yep.
so it's, and even up until today, even athletes who are far more accomplished than all of us is still facing that issue.
Mhm.
Yeah, it doesn't go very deep. I mean, we have the top folks, and it goes deeper on the men's side on the glamour events, but it doesn't really go very deep. And I was, like I said, I was really happy. I said I got to do some things, track and field, my accomplishments in track and field keep opening career doors for me. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, if I get another award, I'm like, oh, please, people, how long can we? But it's really most awards are for having excelled and my contributions in my career, like the lessons that I've taken from my competitive days and applied those lessons in my vocation, which is to
Very
work with
important.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You actually got a George Bush Award, I think.
Yes, I got a George Bush Award. I got an NCAA Civil Anniversary Award. I just got a Dick Enberg Award.
Isn't it about that? Mhm.
Oh my God. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's not just about competing. It's a career. Like
Yeah.
what did you go on and do in your career? How did you use the lessons in competition to apply to your career? And that's what that's what those awards are about.
And that's something that I've been paying very close attention to, especially since College Rival was created. I kind of went behind the scene and just kind of digging up these successful professional sports, who are behind them. I found out recently that Mark Tatum is the deputy the deputy commissioner for the NBA. I think he went to Columbia.
Mhm.
And there's a few. One of the things that I notice about the Ivy Leaguers that I really have a vested interest in, and especially on this show, we actually bring one of the things that we've been doing is looking to bring people from different industries. That's
Mhm.
absolutely has nothing to do with track, but they do have, say, a voice in terms of marketing, branding.
Mhm.
We are also looking for people who are successful in business and actually understand how you actually develop a product from scratch. And so I noticed the Ivy Leaguers you have
They know how to do that. They have all these connections that are
That's-
pretty amazing.
No, that's correct. There's a lot of Ivy Leaguers who are actually behind some of the most successful sports in the United States. And I see an opportunity to bring those people in on the show to talk about how they do stuff. Because the thing with track and field is it has always been seen kind of this close community. And I've said on this show that, and I'm the crazy one, I want to blow it up and start from scratch, right? When you talk about innovation and, going through all that process, one, you identify a problem. Two, how do you solve it? You cannot solve the problem by looking to the same people who have been doing it over how many years. You got to blow it up and think outside of the box. And this is something that me and my colleagues have been driving. So I'm really happy that you're actually the first Ivy Leaguer that we have brought on the show. And I envision actually to see a lot more. I don't know if Mike and Tasha want to chime in on, because this is the start of something big. We need to bring those people from the other sports,
Mhm.
especially those Ivy Leaguers, to kind of provide their take on what good looks like.
And thinking out of the box, like you said, Simon, because that's what's really needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So,
Yeah.
So much
yeah,
expertise in other sports that
Mhm.
yeah,
needs to be brought to track and field. I think we talked, three of us before about track is one of the few sports where if you run fast, you are automatically quote unquote qualified to run the sport. Where if you look at other sports, NFL, people that run NFL, most of them never made professional.
Correct.
And NBA, a lot of sports. I mean, they love the sport, but they bring business or some other background. Track,
Extremely critical.
yes, track seems to be different. Where if you run fast, you can run the sport. It's no disrespect. I don't think that's necessarily the case. So,
That's right. That's
Right.
right. And that's why, and I emphasize, I think we're at a pivotal moment where you need to blow it up and bring thinking outside the box means innovation. Look across your neighbor. How is it that since 2014, F1 Motorsport, somewhat off back then, F1 Motorsport was very driven, somewhat highly masculine. And so they didn't want, Pat, right now, what we are experiencing in track and field is what F1 Motorsport was experiencing. I keep on talking about it. And there's a reason. In 2014, the sport, F1 Motorsport, was so robotic and close community. They did not have much people tuning in. They had a good set of talent, but what they were ignoring was that environment around how technology could help the sport to grow, how it could help to bring in new fans. And what they did, which I'm advocating, in 2014, F1 Motorsport hired this powerful digital marketing company called Liberty Media. And since they took over, because F1 was like maybe around that time, maybe 20, in the 20s rank. The last time I checked yesterday, they are number 4 ranked professional sport
Oh,
in the
wow.
world.
I didn't realize they were that high up, but it's not surprising at all.
Oh my
They've done
goodness.
such a good job marketing that sport.
That's correct. They are growing at an alarming rate, and their strategy is very similar to what we are proposing for track and field. And you have touched on some of the common themes that we're also proposing as well. When you go to an F1 Motorsport event, it's electrifying like what we knew what the Penn Relays was. There's a lot of celebrities. There's a lot of interactions between the fans and the drivers. It's colorful. It's blasted with all these different types of sponsorship. It is very similar to track and field. And that's what we want to focus on. How can you look at other sports that have been successful? Or can you look at other people that has never even run track in their life, but they're smart and they know business and they understand marketing. They are tech savvy. We need those people. And that's why I'm saying blow it up and let's start over. And you get a unique opportunity. The talent will always be there. Look at what's happening in Jamaica. Look at what's happening in the United States.
Right.
Even
right.
even Europe right now is getting hot. I feel track and field in Europe now start to kind of becoming more of the Jamaica USA kind of, and they're coming. It's so we really are at a critical junction, and that is why it's important to have people like yourself and others who have come on the show and not just share your stories around rivalries, but more importantly, how you got there and even what you're currently doing right now. I usually say, I don't believe you can ever have a professional league in track and field unless you actually revisit the whys. Some of those meets at Penn Relays, why were they so successful? Some of those meets in Jamaica, what is it that they're doing down there? Why these athletes are churning out left, right, and center in the United States? How is it that I think Mo and Area Knighton? So these are, there's so many good things happening for the sport. The problem is we're not capturing it and magnifying it to that level where we can market the sport and own it. It's just not gonna, it's the status quo is not what we want to say. And that's why we want to thank you for coming in. We did enjoy your story. The rivalries is always a major component of us telling the story and how we actually can use it to pivot to meet, our goals and objective, which is to develop the sport into a professional league. So coming in the studio and adding your voice is equally welcome. Shout out to the Yale community. I noticed, I saw that you had a lot of that, is it the 50th anniversary celebration?
Athletics, women's varsity athletics. And of course, 50 years of Title IX.
Yes.
Well.
Yeah,
So-
I saw. Yeah.
Yale's started the year Title IX started. Am I hearing that correct?
Well, actually, one of the women talked about Title IX was an employment initiative. And then when it was clear that Title IX was going to end, then that's when it was maybe 7 years or so. And then it kind of sort of blew up because, of course, men's football. It's going to be the death of men's football. So that's when it sort of became associated with sports, but it was really an employment, a kind of affirmative action. A woman who wanted to be a crossing guard, I guess this was in the 50s, was denied. Only boys could be crossing guards. And so when she went to work in DC and the government, they wrote all of this stuff, and it was a working equity. And then it transferred over later, 10 years later, and got associated with athletics.
Wow, I did not know.
Yeah, I did not know that. This is why it's important to know your history.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Which
Yeah, thank you. This has been enjoyable, and thank you for having me come on talking about all those rivalries that kept me stepping.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for your time here in the studio with College Rivals, and I hope to reunite with you in person. I haven't met you yet in person, but geez,
No,
I know you, but
it's just
I-
so far. It's
trust
so
me, you're the
far.
second guest on the show that actually say that they want to come to New Zealand. The first one is actually coming, and I'm gonna convince you, because anybody that comes on the show that plans to come to New Zealand, I will guarantee that I'll make sure you have a marvelous time. How about that?
I know it's going to be marvelous. New Zealand is absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. The people are beautiful.
Yes.
Oh, I definitely want to come. I just have to get myself
Oh yeah.
brace
On-
myself for that 20-hour flight or whatever.
It's actually one of the things that quick tip, the aircraft, the interior, the seats are luxury seats, even though you are in the economy. Like some aircraft, it would only be in business. It is extremely comfortable, and there's a reason for that. It's a lot of sitting and sleeping, so they have made sure. So that's a quick tip to let you know.
I'm
to come to New-
out going to Japan for my godson's
That's
wedding.
another good place as well.
Yes, hey.
Yeah.
But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. In Jamaica, we say one love. And of course, in the mighty US of A, we say God bless America. Thank you. And to our listeners around the world, listening and watching, you can find the show notes, links to the episode, and more by visiting thecollegerivals.com and subscribing to our YouTube channel, College Rivals Track. Thank you very much. Peace
Great,
out.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Patricia.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the College Rivals podcast with Simon Bowen and his team of rivals. Please visit thecollegerivals.com for more information, and be sure to like and follow College Rivals Track and Field on Facebook. If you have any comments or would like to suggest topics for upcoming episodes, please email us at hello@thecollegerivals.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.